Hello, very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us today in our reInvent Recap webinar. My name is Shen Song. I'm the AWS account manager covering Cambodia customers, and I'll be your host for today. As we wait for more people to join us, let me bring you through some of the instructions for participating in today's session, and then we'll wait for more people to join us in the meantime. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues from AWS and our partner Slash. Before we get started, just a few reminders. Do not forget to mute your audio, especially when the speaker is presenting. Please feel free to ask questions anytime through Slido, right? If you look at the screen right now, we have instructions to logging onto Slido and posting your questions there. So please use the instructions on the screen to be able to engage with our speakers. Our speakers will also be available to answer your questions at the end of the session. And since you are eager to find out more about how we can improve our future webinars, please note that we'll be asking you to participate in a quick survey towards the end of the webinar today, right? So now let me run you through today's agenda. We have Donnie Prakoso, a senior developer advocate for Amazon Web Services. I think a lot of you may be familiar with Donnie because he has done a few sessions for us in Cambodia as well. And he will give us a rundown on the updates announced at AWS reInvent 2020 for developers. And he will be followed by Raja, our AWS Senior Manager Analytics specialist, who will share with us exciting developments on analytics this year. Followed by Pom Ming Kiao, our AWS Solutions Architect, who will discuss about infrastructure. And lastly, we have Frank Ang, our AWS Senior Solution Architect, who will focus on databases, AI/ML, management, and governance. We also have a short open forum after the presentations where our speakers will answer all your questions. Please feel free to put your questions on the chat box on the right corner of your screen. But before we go into our first speaker, let's do a short icebreaker, right? So that everyone can try out Slido a little bit. So please use this QR code or use this link on the screen that you're seeing right now to log on to Slido. And let's start with a simple question to get everyone started for the day. So if you're having any troubles logging to Slido, please let us know as well. So while we are waiting for everyone, the question today is, what was the weirdest thing you've done during a webinar online meeting? Well, I see someone has is working on to fix a bug. I guess for a lot of developers that's a common scenario. Brushing my teeth, yes. So I'm quite excited to see what kind of things that people do during a webinar, right? I think for myself, I've taken a lot of webinars in the bed, while I'm eating, working out sometimes as well. Not wearing a shirt. Yes, because yeah. Awesome, munching peanuts. That's something that I like also. All right, so I see that everyone has their things to do when they're joining a webinar and an online meeting. So I hope today everyone sit back and relax. We do have a lot of programs that we plan for today. So let us get started with our program proper. To officially open our program, I would like to introduce Luis Pundes from Slash. Luis has 7 years of experience in technology. He moved to Cambodia 2 years ago and joined Slash in 2019, and is a full stack developer. So I would like to invite Luis to turn on his camera and get today's session started. Hey, Luis. I think you're on mute. Let's.
Hello, hola everyone.
Hi, Luis.
Okay, so let me start.
Yep.
Thank you so much for the flow. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hola, hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's event. I'm Luis. I'm from Slash. First of all, I would like to talk about what the Slash is and what the Slash is doing. I would like to start telling you that Slash is a venture studio, which was founded in 2016. And today, we have more than 50 team members across 4 offices in Singapore, Phnom Penh, Bali, and last but not least, in Armenia. As a company, we build remote autonomous engineering teams. Why? Because we want to help innovators to develop software, products, and also high-tech startups. We are a global company, and we have clients from different countries and industries, such as fintech, logistics, enterprise software, education, and many more. Here, we can see some of our clients, and some of them, I would like to talk about AXA. AXA is one of our clients. AXA is one of the largest companies regarding the insurance industry. AXA has presence in more than 60 countries and having more than 100 million clients is quite a big number. I'm working with a team building product for AXA, and I'm working with the Singaporean team. My team is called B2B, business to business. And AXA Singapore helps clients with life insurance, health insurance, and also general insurance. And everything is AXA services are available 24/7. And everything is thank you to the new technology that allows AXA to have more access to data and also to make better decisions. On one note of the technology, we promote cloud and cloud computing, and especially with AWS. We have been working with AWS since the beginning. It means since 2016. And we have clients to build products on AWS and also with business strategies of migrations to AWS as well. As many of you know, AWS is one of the leaders in cloud and cloud computing, having data centers in different countries. For example, I'm here in Cambodia, and I'm wondering, what is the nearest data center to Cambodia? And I found out that the nearest one is in Singapore. So it means that you can have your applications close to your clients. Besides that, AWS have been evolving very fast. And in one span of just 1 year, there is so much going on, which can be either new features to existing services or even new services. And today, I'm so glad to bring you the reInvent 2020. Highlights what is new in AWS Cloud. You might be wondering, what is new? Because in 1 year, there are so many changes. And our speakers will be talk about the next topics: developer experience, data and analytics, infrastructure, and last but not least, mobile and management. I hope you guys enjoy and benefit from these topics that our speakers will be presenting. Have a great time and thank you. Muchas gracias. Back to you, MC.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for the great opening. And one thing to note about Slash is Slash actually runs a AWS user group for us in in Cambodia. So if you want to learn more about AWS, feel free to go onto the Facebook page to join our AWS user group in Cambodia as well. Now, let's get things started. Our next speaker will share with us the updates specifically for developers that were announced in AWS reInvent 2020. Donnie is a senior developer advocate at AWS. He spent 3 years as a CTO at PT MBDC Media. He was also a lecturer for public relations and IT head and R&D manager. Donnie has a strong analytic and a very passionate approach to research new technology. So maybe can I invite Mr. Donnie to turn on your camera? Mr. Donnie, please.
Thank you, Sanseong. Thank you for the warm introduction. So let me share my screen. Yep. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's there. Yes.
Okay, cool. So hello, everyone. Super excited to be here with all of you to share a few things about AWS reInvent 2020. So my name is Donnie Bracoso. I'm a senior developer advocate working for AWS. As mentioned, that reInvent is an annual technology conference delivered by AWS. With more than 500 technical breakout sessions, you can learn new cloud technologies or dive deep into specific topics, right? So regardless if you're a developer, data scientist, machine learning engineer from any kind of levels, it is always a great opportunity to learn at reInvent. And at reInvent, we also had exciting keynotes with service launch and features announcements, and that's why we are here today. So for today, I'm going to deliver some important announcements from reInvent that are focused for developers, and that includes toolings, containers, serverless, and mobile development. And my fellow colleagues, Frank, Pong, and Raja, they will deliver other areas. And also, if you want to connect with me or ask any kind of questions to help you in your development with AWS, especially in microservices or distributed system, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And just to reiterate what have been mentioned before, with all of these launches and cool stuff happening at reInvent, some of you might have questions. So we are opening Q&A on Slido, and if you have any questions, please post it there. Here's the link again. I'm going to stay at this slide for a while to give you time to copy the link or scan the QR code or just click on the link if anyone can share the links on the chat box. Okay, so I hope everyone has the link. All right, hold tight, prepare your notes, and let's begin the recap. First of all, let's talk about containers. Now, with the fact that 80% of all containers in the cloud run on AWS, AWS is the perfect place for developers to run containers. So let me do a quick overview of these services. We have Amazon ECS, we have Amazon EKS, and AWS Fargate. Now, Amazon Elastic Container Service, or ECS, is a fully managed container orchestration service. If you're just getting started with containers, ECS is a great choice to run containers. It has a built-in integration with other services, and it is well-proven. It is well-proven because ECS is extensively used within Amazon to power various services. Now, if you're operating your application with Kubernetes, then you can use Amazon EKS. Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Service, or EKS, give you the flexibility to start, run, and scale Kubernetes application in the AWS cloud or on premises. Now, the important part about Amazon EKS is that EKS runs upstream Kubernetes and is certified Kubernetes conformant for a predictable experience. And that means that you can easily migrate any standard Kubernetes application to EKS without needing to refactor your code. Plus, you can integrate your application running Kubernetes with other AWS services. And lastly, my personal favorite, AWS Fargate. So unlike ECS and EKS, Fargate is the computing option. Fargate itself is a serverless compute for containers. And to simply put, with Fargate, you don't need to provision and manage servers, as most of the operations will be done by Fargate. Fargate allocates the right amount of compute, eliminating the need to choose instances and scale cluster capacity. And Fargate is available both for ECS and EKS. Right. Now, we've seen more and more customers and developers, they develop and operate applications with containers. And many developers told us that they need to run container clusters across the boundaries of one cloud for migration, compliance, or other reasons. They want to run a hybrid cluster between their data centers and the cloud. And in the last years, customers have asked for more flexibility in where they could deploy containers using Amazon ECS. They had an increasing numbers of use cases that required applications to run outside AWS regions and closer to their other services, wherever they may be located. And for me, what I love about ECS is that it's very simple to operate and the fact that it just works. However, customers' deployment requirements may go beyond AWS' own infrastructure, and they cannot afford to use different container management technologies for different deployment targets. And that's why we launched Amazon ECS Anywhere. ECS Anywhere is a capability in Amazon ECS that enables customers to easily run and manage container-based application on-prem, including on virtual machines, bare metal servers, and other customers managed infrastructure. And for those who love to operate with Kubernetes, we also have launched Amazon EKS Anywhere. Similar to ECS Anywhere, EKS Anywhere is a new deployment option for Amazon EKS that enables you to easily create and operate Kubernetes cluster on-prem, including on your own virtual machines and bare metal servers. EKS Anywhere provides an installable software package for creating and operating Kubernetes cluster on-prem and automation tooling for cluster lifecycle support. Now, EKS Anywhere creates cluster based on Amazon EKS distro. This is the same Kubernetes distribution or distro used by EKS for cluster on AWS. And EKS Anywhere enables you to automate cluster management. It also helps you to reduce costs for supporting your application and eliminate the redundant effort of using multiple tools for operating Kubernetes cluster. EKS Anywhere is fully supported by AWS. In addition, you can leverage the EKS console to view all your Kubernetes cluster running anywhere, right? And we launched Amazon EKS a couple of years ago, and we watch customers operate it at scale. And by definition of at scale, we are talking about millions of clusters of all sizes around the world. And now we are in that kind of position to identify what works, what components to run, and how. So we've learned that customers want a consistent experience on premises and in the cloud for migration purposes or to enable hybrid cloud setups. Now, with Amazon EKS distro, you are able to standardize the same Kubernetes distribution available through EKS. This means that you can now manually deploy reliable and secure clusters without continuously testing and tracking Kubernetes updates, dependencies, and security patches. And you can deploy EKS distro wherever your application needs to run. You can deploy cluster and let AWS take care of testing and tracking for the Kubernetes updates, dependencies, and patches. Now, each EKS distro verifies new Kubernetes version for compatibility. The source code, open source tools, and settings are provided for reproducible builds. And EKS distro will provide extended support for Kubernetes with builds of previous version updated with the latest security patches. And lastly, EKS distro is available as open source on GitHub. Now, and still on the container space, many developers already manage container images privately within their organization. Now, using Amazon ECR or Elastic Container Registry private repositories, developers, they can host their image. And Amazon ECR hosts images in highly available and scalable architecture. And this helps developers to reliably deploy containers for their own application. However, when looking to share images publicly for anyone to find and download, they must upload to public websites or public repo and registry. And most of them, they do not offer availability commitments and acceptable usage limits. Now, as a solution for this kind of challenge, developers duplicate and manage public images locally, which makes it difficult to stay in sync with new versions of the image and adds another operational complexity, right? And that's why we launched Amazon Elastic Container Registry Public. Amazon ECR Public is a fully managed registry that makes it easy for developers to publicly share container software worldwide for anyone to download. Anyone with or without an AWS account, they can use Amazon ECR Public to pool container software for use. And Amazon ECR Public Gallery is a website that allows anyone to browse and search for public container images. They can also view the developer provided details and see all the pull comments, right? And with this kind of launch, I'm really happy to see this kind of announcements, because now we as developers, we no longer need to use different private and public registry when building and sharing our public container artifacts, and we still can make them both in sync, right? So, and Amazon ECR Public brings the scale and performance of Amazon ECR to public container images and related files such as Helm charts and other OCI artifacts. And publishing is as easy as single Docker push command from CI/CD or from CI/CD workflows. And images that you put into this Amazon ECR Public are geo-replicated for reliable availability around the world. And developers can simplify the application, build and deploy processes by using public images directly from ECR Public, as opposed to creating and managing local copies, right? And that's it. We've just finished the container section. So let's move to the next section, my personal favorite, serverless. So AWS helped to create this category that the industry now calls as serverless computing. And Aws Lambda is one of the most adopted by developers to modernize their applications. So in this section, we're going to cover a few things related to serverless. Okay, just to give you a bit of context, right, with Aws Lambda. With Aws Lambda, you upload your code and run it without thinking about servers. That's it, as simple as that. And many customers and developers, they enjoy the way this works. But if you have invested in container tooling for your development workloads, it's not easy to use the same approach to build application using Lambda. Now, to help you with that, I'm happy to announce that Aws Lambda now supports packaging and deploying functions as container images. And this makes it easy for developers to build serverless applications by using familiar container tooling and dependencies. And customers will continue to benefit from Aws Lambda automatic scaling, high availability, start times of typical tens of milliseconds instead of seconds, native integration with various AWS services, and only paying for what you use. Now, support for packaging functions as container images is offered alongside the zip format. Now, customers can package their code and dependencies by starting with either an Aws Lambda provided open source base image, or by using one of their preferred community or private enterprise images, right? So to give you a big idea on how you can actually package your Lambda function with containers, I'm going to show you in this quick demo to show you a step-by-step on how you containerize your Lambda function and deploy it. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen. I'm going to make it a bit bigger now. Okay, so what we have on the screen is my directory, and I'm going to open my Lambda function. Okay, so this is a basic Lambda function. It's written in Go language. It has the main handler, which will trigger a hello world function, right? So this is a very simple Lambda function. Now, what we want to do is we want to package this function as a container. And to do that, we're going to need a Docker file. So this is the Docker file, right? And this contains like a set of instructions on how we should package this hello world function. Now, as you can see that I'm using multi-stage build, right? So I have a multi-stage build for this Lambda function. And this is really a preferred approach, and I really recommend you to do this to containerize application when it comes to binary application like Go or Rust. And the Docker image needs to implement Lambda runtime, right? And for that, we need to use the available base image for Lambda, which you can see I'm using one here from the Docker repository. So this is the base image for AWS Lambda Go. There's another images for Python and other supported language, right? And you can see that we have a complete Docker file. And once it's done, we can use our native tooling. We can build this one for to package our function. So everything is a really usual tools that we use, right? And now the advantage on using containers for Lambda function is that you can still do testing with the Docker image, right? So let me run this Docker image. But so this base image, it has the runtime API. And if I test this out, I'm going to so I have this one. This is a test file. So if I hit it using like a simple curl, and then it's going to give me the return, which is the hello Lambda, right? So this is a really convenience way if you want to do like a integrate testing, right? And you can see the Docker app received the event sent by curl and triggered the hello world function. And this really helps us as the developers who want to streamline the testing process using container workflow. And next, we're going to do deployment. And for this, we need to push this image to a repository. And I'm going to use Amazon ECR. So this is the Amazon ECR, right? You can see that I have already the Docker image from the application that we have reviewed earlier, right? This is the ECR image. And if we go to the Lambda console, and if we create a new function, you can see that there's a new feature to deploy Lambda from container image. And it's pretty straightforward. You only need to specify the container image on ECR. So we can browse the image, and then we can select the repository that we have, the image that we have pushed to Amazon ECR. Right. So you can click on the latest tag and then select image, and that's it. Yeah. Now let's test it. To test this Lambda function, I've already deployed it. And if we see here, right, you can see that there's an image URI, and it's a package as a container. And if you run this function, right, it's a success. So you can see that the return is the same string that we return in our Go application. So that's how you use this new feature. It's really helpful for those who are already using container workflow as part of the development process, integration testing, or CI/CD. Right. So let's switch back to our slide. Now, our next announcement is pretty cool, since using Lambda is more economic than ever. And since AWS launched Lambda in 2014, you have been charged for the number of times your code is triggered. And for the time your code executes, it rounded up to the nearest 100 milliseconds. And now with this launch, that we are now rounding up duration to the nearest milliseconds with no minimum execution time. And with this new pricing, you're going to pay less most of the time. And it's going to be more noticeable when you have functions whose execution time is much lower than 100 milliseconds, such as the low latency APIs. And with this pricing, there's no more of an incentive to optimize the duration of functions, even if it is already well below 100 milliseconds. Your engineering efforts can reduce costs even more. If you increase memory to get more CPU power and speed up your functions, you now get the benefit of a lower build duration below 100 milliseconds as well. And that means that increasing performance and reducing latency is going to be cheaper than before. Next up, we have application integration. So in 2017, we launched AmazonMQ, a managed message broker service for Apache Activemq. Apache Activemq is actually a popular open source message broker that is fast and feature rich. It offers queues, topics, durable and non-durable subscription, push-based and poll-based messaging and filtering. And some customers over the years, they told us they want to use Rapidmq. It's one of the most popular open source message brokers other than the Activemq and a critical component of distributed applications like commodities trading and order processing software. The problem is RabbitMQ message brokers require significant investment in the expertise needed for creating and patching complex cluster deployments. And I'm happy to share that now we have launched AmazonMQ for RabbitMQ, a managed messaging service that reduces the operational overhead for you who wants to run RabbitMQ message brokers. Customers can continue to use their preferred broker and have cost-efficient, scalable messaging capacity. And with this kind of announcements, the AmazonMQ managed the work involved in setting up both individual and clustered message brokers, from provisioning the infrastructure capacity to installing the messaging software. And once it's up and running, AmazonMQ handles administrative tasks such as patching the operating system and messaging software. And if you have been building with AWS, you will realize that we have a couple of options to use message broker when it comes to distributed system or even driven microservices, right? And this is a quick overview for those who are currently considering which services to integrate. For those who are building application in the cloud, we recommend you to use Amazon SKS and Amazon SNS. They have simpler APIs with unlimited throughput and fully managed, which means you need to do nothing for the infrastructure. But for those who have an existing or legacy applications, we recommend you to use AmazonMQ. And this AmazonMQ is more for application migration with API compatibility, feature rich, and low latency response. All right, so we've just finished the application integration, and let's talk about IoT. So first, we introduced the second generation of AWS IoT Greengrass. And just quickly introduce and just do a quick review on what AWS IoT Greengrass is. AWS IoT Greengrass extends AWS IoT onto your devices so they can act locally on the data they generate while still taking advantage of the cloud. Now, Greengrass extends the same programming model from the cloud to the edge, and does this using the same security mechanism and encryption used in the cloud with AWS IoT. And since we've introduced the first version, it already helped developers and customers who needs to extend the capabilities of cloud and enhance the features for the edge devices. So, you know, this is a really cool service if you're working with IoT. Now, a few things to emphasize about this new feature, right? For the second generation, we rewrote the entire stack to be GVM-based and modularized to create the most flexible edge platform to easily build, deploy, and manage device software across millions of devices. The second version is completely modular, which allows you to easily add or remove edge features. You can add capabilities to more powerful devices or remove feature on constrained devices. So you have that kind of flexibility when it comes to IoT Greengrass and your IoT devices. And you can also still deploy your own device software at scale, even with the intermittent connectivity to the cloud. And that's really important because that is the biggest challenge when it comes to developing with IoT devices. And you can also interact with Greengrass CLI to do local deployment and configuration to manage device software deployments locally. And lastly, the AWS IoT Greengrass 2.0 core client software is now open source. And this is to help developers and customers to make edge computing even more accessible and adoptable to the hardware platform and various vertical industries. And to extend the capability of AWS IoT Greengrass 2.0, we also announced AWS IoT Sitewise Edge. AWS IoT Sitewise Edge is a software that runs on-prem at industrial sites and makes it easy to collect, process, and monitor equipment data on premises before sending the data to AWS Cloud. So the way it works is Sitewise Edge is installed on local hardware, such as third-party industrial computers, gateways, or on AWS Outposts and AWS Snow family compute devices. It also includes a gateway software component that runs on popular third-party industrial gateways and reads the data from on-site data aggregators or historian databases. And this is the gateway software is provided as a prepackaged inside the AWS IoT Greengrass connector for each protocol and can be deployed on any device that can run IoT Greengrass. And with that, you can enjoy from local data processing and monitoring and even disconnected operations when cloud connectivity is disrupted or latency sensitivity is really high. And IoT is a really exciting area for development. Not only it provides a greater opportunity to expand your business, but it's also fun. Now, if you are new to IoT and would like to get started by doing some programming, we just launched an AWS IoT Educate. So AWS IoT Educate is an IoT microcontroller loaded with sensors, Wi-Fi connectivity, and a screen to run your first IoT experiments. And using this kit is a really great way to learn IoT and the overall AWS IoT ecosystem. I really recommend you to test it out, get yourself familiar with all IoT features provided by AWS by using this AWS IoT Educate. Right, so we've come to the last segment, and let's talk about mobile, web apps, and other announcements. Right, so for those who are developing mobile and web apps, you might have heard about AWS Amplify. AWS Amplify is a set of tools and services that can be used together or on their own to help front-end web and mobile developers build scalable full-stack applications. And Amplify now has a new feature called Amplify Admin Ui. Amplify Admin Ui offers front-end web and mobile developers an easy way to develop application backends and manage application content outside the AWS console. Now, every Amplify app backend is now automatically set up with the Admin Ui, which can be used to model data, add authentication and authorization, and manage application content, users, and groups. And this is pretty cool since you can give access to team members who don't have AWS access. They can be invited to join the Admin Ui via email, giving both developers and non-developers easier access to configure and manage the application backend and application data. And with Amplify, you can also create APIs, both GraphQL and REST APIs. Now, you can deploy the GraphQL and REST APIs and host websites using Aws Fargate in addition to existing AppSync, API Gateway, and Amplify console options. So you just need to run the Amplify configure project command and enable the container-based deployments option. You can bring your own containers, and all you need is a Docker file, similar to what I've shown to you in the first demo. Or you can also use the Docker Compose configuration using the build and deploy pipeline, or configure your own custom pipeline. So on the background, this is how it works. Amplify CLI manages infrastructure such as VPC subnets, IAM policies, and all the securities and infrastructure practices with zero prior knowledge of AWS required. Networking between containers automatically handled for you, as well as SSL generation for hosted sites. In addition, Amplify CLI creates a code pipeline to build and deploy your images. The pipeline has cost optimization best practices such as lifecycle policies, on-build artifacts, and images. And this can be become your first option, especially to streamline your existing workflow using containers, right? So I'm going to show you how it works easily on how that you can use this kind of new feature. So this is the Amplify Container Api. The first thing that you need to initialize an Amplify project with the latest version of Amplify, right? So and then in this version, I'm using version 4.4. Okay, so you need to understand, you need to have a specific greater than 4.39 version of Amplify CLI. And once that you have properly set up your project, you need to configure your project to enable API gateways and serverless containers. And to do that, you need to execute the Amplify configure project command, right? And this command will let you to edit the original configuration when you initialize your project, right? And at the end, you will see there's an option to enable container-based deployment. Let's wait it a bit, like this one. So if you chose to enable container-based deployments, then that means it's going to rewrite your configurations. And this is not something that you will see during the project initialization. So you need to do Amplify configure project once you have initialized your project. Now, if you choose yes, it will update the config and enable the serverless containers. So I mentioned about it's going to change the configuration. Not change, it's just going to update the configuration. And then you can see that here we have project config. You can see that we have the serverless containers options now is becoming true, right? So we have already enabled the serverless containers. And to use this Amplify container, you need to run this command, Amplify API, right? And then you'll be given an option to use REST or GraphQL. Then if you choose REST, it means that you also have another options to use Aws Lambda or Aws Fargate. And if you want to use the container base, you need to use the Aws Fargate. And once that you set your option in the background, it will generate a skeleton folder. It's going to be on the source file. Amplify backend API. Now, this is the skeleton folder that will be generated by Amplify. And this is how it looks like, right? So we have this distribution and we have the source folder. And if we go to this inside this folder, I have built a simple Python API-based applications using Flask framework. It only has one endpoint and running on port 8080. Right, and I also have this Docker file, which instructs Docker on how it should package this application, including to expose the application on port 8080. Right now, at this point, you can build and test your API locally, similar to what we've done in the first demo. Nothing new, right? But what makes this feature got hyped by many developers is now you can push the configuration code Docker file just by executing Amplify push. So what's it going to do is the Amplify, we're going to create the API gateway and Fargate to run your API application in serverless mode, right? And then if once that is done, because I've already deployed it, you can check the endpoint by executing the Amplify status. Now you can see that I already have an API deployed properly, the application that we've already reviewed, and this is the API endpoints. So if we copy and paste this endpoint, oh, I'm missing my mouse. Oh, here you go. Okay, if I copy this endpoint and we go to this one and then put it the API, because that's the endpoint, we can see that the function works. So now Amplify is a totally one-stop solution for developers, either they are front-end or back-end, to build an application and consolidate all those elements into one single hub. Okay, so let me start this slide again. And the next launch is related to location. Location data is a vital ingredient in today's application, enabling capabilities ranging from asset tracking to location-based marketing. However, developers face significant challenges when integrating location data into their applications. Those challenges ranging from cost, privacy, security, and slow integration. And with that, I'm happy to introduce you to Amazon Location Service. As obvious as its name, this service makes it easy for developers to add location data to application without sacrificing data security and user privacy. Now, with this service, you can easily add capabilities such as maps, point of interest, geocoding, routing, geofences, and tracking to application. Amazon Location provides cost-effective location-based services, or LBS, using high-quality data from global and trusted providers. And actually, we also have a really nice console that will help you to get started with this feature, with this new service. So, in a nutshell, there are 4 main features in location service. We have maps, we have place index, we have geofencing, and we also have tracking. Maps helps you to visualize location information and are the foundation of many location-based service capabilities. Amazon Location Service provides map tiles of different styles sourced from global location data providers such as Esri and here. And for places, it enables your application to offer search functionality, convert addresses into geographic coordinates in latitude and longitude, which is called as geocoding, and convert a coordinate into street address, which is called as reverse geocoding. So you can type your keywords. And with the geofencing, it gives your application the ability to detect and act when a tracked device enters or exits a predetermined geographical boundary known as a geofence. If a breach event is detected, it will send an event to Amazon Event Bridge, and from there you can programmatically process the event. And lastly, tracking. With tracking, you can instantly retrieve current and historical location of devices running your tracking-enabled application. And with this feature, you can track your devices from point A to point B to point C and so on. And this gives you the ability to use the location trail of your devices to optimize operations such as an inventory placements, manufacturing sequencing, or delivery dispatch. You can update position and you can get the history location of a particular device. Right, so that is the Amazon Location Service, and you can also get all those data and also do all the operation programmatically using using the SDK for supported languages, and you can also trigger using CLI. Right, so let's switch back to this slide. So this is a really cool service that you can use to finally add location data to your applications with high quality, cost-effective, and predictable pricing. And it comes with built-in privacy and security. You can use this for various use cases, for example, geo-marketing, asset tracking, to delivery and logistic management, right? Okay, so, and that ends my segment. Hopefully this segment helps you to understand a new major announcement, mainly for doing development. And also, hopefully, all the demos give you a big picture on how you can get started and what possibilities they unlock. Just a gentle reminder, if you have any questions, please post on Slido. Okay, so I think that's all. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me on Twitter or LinkedIn. And with that, I'll return this to the moderator.
Well, thank you, Donnie. Thank you so much, Donnie. I think to me, serverless is still the holy grail for developers, right? I think at the end of the day, you want to build your code, not looking too much into infrastructure and just deploy your code somewhere, right? At the end of the day. So yeah, let's see if you can pull up the next slide. Yes. So yeah, like I mentioned, if you have any questions for Donnie, please go ahead and submit the questions over at slido.com, and we can answer all these questions towards the end of the session today. Right. Moving on. So this question, let's leave it to the end, and then we will answer it together. So moving on to our next speaker, is actually a very, very interesting topic. I think a lot of us or attendees today have come to listen to this topic today. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, Raja. Raja has spent 25 years in designing and implementing large-scale complex IT systems. He currently leads the Data and Analytics Specialist Solution Architects team for ASEAN in AWS. And Raja will be talking through some of the analytics new releases that AWS has announced in reInvent 2020. So let me welcome Raja, our Senior Manager Analytics Specialty from AWS. Raja, please turn on your camera, and I'll hand over the time to you.
Thank you, Shamson.
Let me start by sharing the screen. Okay, it says I cannot. All right, let me know if my screen is visible.
Yep, it's visible already. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's get started. Tony, great presentation. I learned a lot from your show. It's completely exciting. And again, it's my pleasure to share the analytics track here. And I'm going to cover 3 topics mainly. First is to introduce the AWS analytics strategy to you all. And we have a portfolio of very broad and deep number of services. And my idea is to leave you with a mental model by which you can understand the value proposition of different services. And the second topic is to give you the introduction to the new announcements we made in the reInvent. And as I mentioned, there's a lot that I'm going to touch upon, but there will be some help at the end on where you can go get some help in getting started if you are interested in exploring any of these analytics services. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about the mental model first. And if you have a lot of experience in building big data analytics systems, by now you know that you would need a data lake to bring in your structured and structured, semi-structured data all in one place. And that's how you get started. Even if you are building a web application, you talk about your clickstream data completely generated in JSON, and you want to bring it into your lake. And you want to combine that with your customer profile, probably from a CRM system, which is a structured data, and you want to get them to the lake and then start your processing there. And even this afternoon, I had a call with a customer who was looking at bringing voice recording from ships into the data lake and start processing. So that's an important building block in any big data processing ecosystem. And you would also know that when it comes to processing and storing your data and insights, there is no such thing as one solution that fits all your requirements, right? So if you're talking about having your customer 360 built, customer 360, your attributes of your customers will keep adding and changing. So you are better off choosing a NoSQL system like DynamoDB. And if you are looking at searching through your logs using text indexing and text searching, you will have to choose Elasticsearch. And similarly, if you're running your high SLA business reports, compliance reports, you need the data to be modeled in a certain way. So Amazon Aurora or Redshift comes into picture here. So the claim that one solution can actually solve all the needs is highly inaccurate. And this is what we all have to keep in our mind. So with that in the picture, you will definitely understand that data now has to move seamlessly into the data lake, and so this is what we call data moving in, and then to the purpose-built services for the use cases that I mentioned. From the lake, you may have to process the data and move into the purpose-built stores and engines, and we call that pattern as data moving from inside to the outside. And there are also scenarios where your data will move around the perimeter, right? So the scenario of your clickstream data in Elasticsearch and your customer profile or product, your product master in Amazon Aurora, you want to bring them together so that you can run some meaningful analytics on it. So this is data moving around the periphery. So we realized that seamless data movement is one of the important themes by which we have to align our services. And also to continue to help developers reduce the heavy lifting. And as you are democratizing data in this way, the unified governance becomes very important. One of the main drawbacks of data lakes in the last 10 years is what the industry calls a risky data lake. So as data just goes in there and without any governance mechanism, it leads to a lot of exposures, and you might be seeing it happening in the news all the time. So handling governance at scale in a very unified manner is another important aspect that we want to solve. And put together all of that, we have to look at it from a cost perspective as well as performance perspective. So this is the mental model that you can actually carry if you look at analytics services. And AWS officially calls it lakehouse architecture, having your data lake and then your purpose-built services, all tied by a unified governance mechanism, and then facilitating seamless data movement across these different pillars. Okay. So with that, what I'm going to do is when I present the new announcements, I will try to put them under these different themes, such as this. And this is a summary, but we will go into each one of them. And I will just try to spend some time on whatever I think is important for you here. So let's get started. The foundational capability, which I'm going to talk about from a big data analytics perspective, is S3 strong consistency. I think our fellow speakers will also touch upon it in the next presentation. So one of the important points that you would know in distributed storage systems such as this is the eventual consistency model. And you have used S3 in the past, and you know that if you are writing a new object, and then within the next microsecond and millisecond, if you list it, there is no guarantee that it would appear. The reason is because behind the scenes, the distributed systems have to make copies to ensure the durability and before any read can happen. And that's why it is called eventually consistent. Same thing happens for your updates and writes also. Now, well, this behavior has caused a little bit of inconvenience for big data developers. So especially, you are dealing with lot of objects that you are reading and you are transforming and you are writing them, and in the next stage you want to read them again. So if the consistency is not there, there is a little bit of custom coding that we have to do, or use the solutions like EMR file system, which offers a consistent view. And from the open source side, there used to be S3 Guard. So these additional layers have always caused additional complexity to big data application development. And this particular announcement of S3 consistency, strong consistency, is going to greatly help eliminating this complexity. And it is, it comes with no cost, so it's completely cost efficient, and it provides absolute data consistency, pretty much similar to what you see in databases. Okay. So that's something that I want to talk about first. And then continuing on the theme of consistency, let's talk about lake formation service. Again, the original theme was unified governance, right? So lake formation itself is created mainly to bring in that governance layer. You will have a lot of data that comes into data lake. Pretty much, if without any control, it becomes a data swamp very easily. So lake formation was created to avoid that anti-pattern in the data lakes. It helps you to quickly index the data so that you can actually search the catalog and find where your data is. And once you find the data, you can, the original publishers of the data are able to set the access privileges, who will be able to see what data, and lake formation offers that unified governance. So that's how lake formation has been functioning. From the new capability perspective, there are three topics that I want to talk about here. First is transactions, then row-level security, and finally the performance aspects of it. So pretty much similar to databases. In databases, they are always ACID compliant. Now imagine that capability coming in for an object in your data lake. That will be phenomenal, actually, if you look at it. So AWS manages that very nicely. So in the lake formation, which is currently in the preview, which you can ask for whitelisting access and you can try it out, all you have to do is to declare a particular table or an object to be a governed table. You just have to do that. And after that, with the lake formation APIs, it suddenly acts like a database table where your updates are ACID compliant, which means you can update a specific record and you will be able to read it back and it will be completely consistent. So that's a significant announcement on the lake formation side. And number two is the security aspect, which is particularly on row-level filtering. So one of the challenges that big data developers have is, I have a table with millions of records, and some portion of the record is actually very sensitive. And anybody who is querying that should not be able to give an access to those particular set of rows, right? And this could be an S3 object itself. And the way, one of the ways that brute force approach that we could do is to copy the data for multiple audiences. So whoever cannot see those rows, in that copy, those rows will not be existing. So maintain different copies for different levels of access, and you can solve that problem. But you know the complexity in managing that data and integrity issues, everything that comes with that. So once again, lake formation comes into help here. You will be able to declare what are the sensitive, by using tags, you'll be able to declare what is sensitive and who can access it, and that's about it. And every time someone with a different role comes and access it, lake formation does the rollable filtering. So again, eliminates a lot of heavy lifting in this case. So performance, obviously, I will not go into details in this presentation. So eventually, as a summary, you are talking about a way of governing your data in your data lake. And through, it's a single place where you can define your governance, and it is consistently enforced wherever you are accessing it from. So you may be accessing your data through Athena service, which is a distributed query service, or you may be accessing it from Redshift using query federation mechanisms. So no matter how you are accessing it, the governance is uniformly applied. And this is something that's supremely powerful. And for obviously audit trails will be kept. This is for the compliance reasons. So if you are talking about GDPR compliance and various compliance requirements, lake formation has all these features for you to write on now. Okay. So I'm going to now move into the next segment, Glue Elastic Views. I'm just touching on this new announcement here. And this comes under the theme of seamless data movement. So if you look at the metal model back, whether it is moving data from outside to inside, inside, outside, or moving on the perimeter, Elastic Views is the new capability that helps you to achieve that. So first, let's look at what problem it's trying to solve. So if you are a ETL developer, if your task is mostly about taking data from multiple sources, combining them, and then to write to them in a new destination. So that is the fundamental task that you would be doing. And often you end up writing some, you end up using connectors to connect, pull the data, probably using some scripting languages, Python and Spark, to write to custom transformations, and we'll be writing it into your destination using some other adapters. And you have to handle scale here. When the data from the source side increases, it has to scale. And you also have to take care of subsequent updates also. So sources keeps adding new data, and you will have to keep them in sync. So this has been a repetitive task ETL developers have been doing. And if you look at it, 80% of this is undifferentiated heavy lifting. So that's exactly where this service comes into play. And this has quickly become one of my favorites. Because the way it is conceptualized is that now you're able to use SQL. You don't have to really use anything sophisticated. And it draws inspiration from the concept of database views, materialized views. So you can actually look at data from multiple data sources, and you see the polyglot nature of these data sources. It could be NoSQL, SQL, etc. And you are able to write an SQL statement that's going to access, combine the data, and it's going to publish it into any of the destinations. It could be S3, it could be Elasticsearch, and so forth. So all with just SQL. And what's again great about this is you can actually build it and deploy it, and it's going to scale by itself because it's serverless. And it also monitors the changes in the source, and it's going to automatically synchronize the changes to the destination. It's just beautiful. It works like magic. Now, in terms of the current state, you will have supported data sources in this way, and your destinations are listed here. So how we can really use this is the data movement that I talked about. You are having your customer profile in one of the sources. You are having your transactions in another sources, and you just want to combine these two and bring it into a common location, a purpose-built service of your preference, and you are able to immediately run your analytics queries on it. So this is just all done with SQL, and you can imagine the power of this. Okay, now I'm going to move into another new announcement from the Glue family of services called Databrew. This again comes into the ETL space or into the data preparation phase rather. To describe the problem it solves. So if you are a machine learning, if you are a data scientist or a business analyst, if you are given a huge file, the first thing you want to do is to profile it and understand the data. So normally your questions would be, given a particular column, what are all the unique values in that particular column? And you would want to see the distribution of those unique values. Are there any outliers in that particular list of values? Or take a couple of columns and see how they correlate with each other. So you want to understand this part of the data in a very visual manner without even writing a piece of code. That's what this particular service helps you to solve. And once you have understood the data, now you want to go ahead with your normalization, your cleaning. As data scientist, you will have you have a lot of requirements on how the data should be transformed. For example, one-hot encoding, kind of a transformation. And again, you want this to work on large data sets also. The volume also comes into play. So this solves that particular challenge, which is very, very critical in big data workflows. And the way it solves is there is a built-in profiler. You can visually, you can just connect to a data source and then start to analyze the file or a subset of the file first, and quickly get a lot of statistics from the file, all in visual manner. And then once you understood the data, you want to clean the data, and there is about 250 built-in transformations all available for you. You can extend this list of transformations, but when I looked at it, it's pretty much giving me everything that we typically need. And this is what the no-code or low-code aspects of it. And you will write a successive set of transformations, and all the transformations now will be tracked in the data lineage graph. So you will exactly know what kind of transformations your data went through. And finally, the set of transformations that you have configured, cleaning rules that you have put in, you can save them as recipes, and then you can just run these recipes any number of times you want as the file on the actual file itself. So this is this would be, I'm pretty sure this will be allowed by data scientists for doing some rapid data preparation, as well as business analysts who don't want to depend on heavy ETL logic to transform the data that you are getting. So I just had a quick video on this, which I can share it with you also later. Let me see if I have that. So this is a video recording of Databrew. And you can notice that once you point to a particular data source and files, it's giving a lot of visual statistics about it. So I'm at a particular point where your data scientist is looking at changing this particular column. So look at this column. It has customer, subscriber. It has some defined values here. In data science, you may want to do an integer encoding of it. So basically, ML algorithms want them to be integers. So as you select this particular column, you notice here what kind of transformation you want, and then it lists the unique values, and you are able to actually say that. I'll just reduce the volume here. Yeah, so pretty much you are able to set some values and then keep this going. So it's pretty straightforward to use. Okay, getting back to my presentation here. Okay, so that's Databrew. In terms of positioning, if you are a business analyst or data scientist, Databrew is mainly built for you. Pre-built transformations, low coding, and automatic scaling and working on large data sets all comes with that. Okay. So moving on to the next list, this is EMR. If you are not familiar with EMR, this is the big data processing service from AWS. If you are working on Spark, any of the big data frameworks like Spark, Flink, or Presto, or Apache Hudi, instead of managing it yourselves, you can use EMR. With a few clicks, you are able to go to the console, choose the big data framework, choose the kind of cluster that you want, and within a few minutes, everything will be provisioned, and you can actually start to deploy your code and deploy your application. So that's as fast as you can go there. So on the performance side, always what AWS does is to take the open source frameworks and we add a lot of optimizations on top of it, so that we are at least always more than 1 or 2 times faster than the open source frameworks. And coupled with that, there are also some purpose-built servers that you can use depending on your workload, like Graviton 2, which is going to further give acceleration by which you can run your big data applications. But the important announcement is going back to what Tony introduced, it's EKS. So in the past, if you want to, you only have 2 options. Either use EMR on a fully managed EC2 cluster. So you will be able to specify, this is the kind of missions I need, and you'll be able to work on it. But if you don't want the fully managed option, but you want to use EKS as your cluster manager for your big data framework, then the only option is you have to self-manage it. So you may have your own cluster, but you have to take care of deploying open source frameworks on it and managing it. Now, this has become another undifferentiated heavy lifting, and we don't expect our developers to go through this challenge. So now this announcement came in, which is EMR on Amazon EKS. Yeah. So what you can do is you may have your EKS cluster, probably you're running some workload on it. This could be your web application or your e-commerce application running on it, and you notice that during the off-peak hours, the cluster is not fully utilized. So you can actually choose to deploy your EMR on this cluster, and you can start to submit your Spark jobs during the night times. That's all it is. It's basically optimally utilizing the hardware underneath in a multi-tenancy fashion, free to run any workload that you want, and then the Amazon takes care of managing the big data framework itself. If it's a Presto cluster or it's Apache Flink, we take care of it. You just have to have your EKS cluster on it. So I don't want to go into too much details here, but it rides on your multiple availability zones. It gives you a view of a single cluster and multi-tenancy by which you can deploy any kind of EMR workload on the single cluster. Yeah. So you can dive deep into this later. I'll just skip and go. The last topic on the EMR subject is Emr Studio. Once again, it's an integrated development experience for you to develop big data applications. So again, you don't have to go into AWS console. You can have it standalone, integrated into your corporate identity store. And it's pretty quick to go here, connect this notebook back to the EMR cluster that you are running on EKS, and you're able to deploy big data applications pretty quickly. Yeah. So this again accelerates the way you develop the big data pipelines. Okay, I'm just Redshift. Some of the exciting announcements came from Redshift. For those you don't know, this is our data warehouse service. I will just quickly touch upon some of the important aspects here. If you are a data warehouse practitioner or if you are a database practitioner, you would find this interesting. It's a fast evolving area. There's a lot of capabilities that are coming in rapidly here. So one of the important announcements is the query accelerator, or in short, we call it AQA. So in databases, there is always a cache on the database servers, basically to avoid hitting the storage all the time. But in big data environment, like a data warehouse, the cache inside the actual servers won't be sufficient, right? So which means often we will end up accessing the disk. The query performances are slowing down, and it's going to be a big challenge. So imagine that you have a distributed cluster this is just a caching layer, right? Which is in adjunct to your data warehouse, and then that means very rarely we will have to go to the disk because of the caching layer here. So, but from a database practitioner perspective, you don't have to do anything extra. It's all built. It'll be built within underneath, and the cache will be used, giving you great amount of performance. So that's something that's coming in. Data sharing, again, the problem that the data warehouse practitioners have when they deal with multiple data warehouse clusters is that if sometimes when you want to combine the data and run a query, you won't be able to do that unless you copy the data from one cluster to the other cluster. So once again, going back to that seamless data movement theme, what we have announced is data sharing capability. So if you have your Redshift clusters within the same region, you are able to nominate one as the producer cluster and the other one as the consumer cluster. And you are able to share data that is available in the producer cluster to the consumer cluster without physically copying the data from one to another. So from the consumer cluster perspective, such a table will be as good as a native table inside this cluster, and you are able to run your queries on it, join the data on it. So this again is very useful for large organizations where there are multiple lines of businesses and each having their own Redshift cluster, so they can make use of this feature. Very quickly, ML capabilities in the data warehouse. Again, going back to the theme of bringing in ML in the hands of everybody. So if you have a table of customer profile information and you want to introduce a new column which has the churn predictions inside it. So your churn model probably is running in SageMaker. So all you can do is just by using SQL, you are able to invoke the model and get the scores and populate that additional column that you have. Extremely, extremely powerful. You can imagine without this, you will have to copy the data out. You will have to run a model on it, and then you have to bring back the updates back into your data warehouse. But with this feature, you just have to write an SQL and you invoke machine learning, and that's how advanced this is going to be. Then the performance improvements part. So normally tuning the data warehouses is always a challenge. It needs a lot of expertise. What we are announcing now is the automated tuning aspect. So the Redshift is going to now monitor the usage pattern, and it's going to be automatically suggesting the sort keys and partition keys and various optimization mechanisms. It might even go ahead and alter these optimizations on behalf of you, using ML to infer what's the right way to adopt the underlying data that you have. So again, eliminates a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting on that aspect. Federated queries, I talked about. If you are in a warehouse, you want to access data in your data lake, use this federated query features. Once again, don't have to copy the data. You are able to join data on the fly and get your questions answered. So again, I love this feature. Right. I'm just going to accelerate a little bit here. Kinesis data streams. Those who are streaming practitioners, you would know that this is the exchange, streaming exchange that AWS offers. Other than this, we also have MSK, the Kafka streaming, similar to this also. The only announcement here is that for compliance reasons, we have extended the lifetime of your messages in the data streams. It used to be 7 days to, it used to be 24 hours by default. You can extend to 7 days, but now optionally, you can extend it to an year also. It simply helps you to go back in time and process your data whenever you want it, and also to adhere to compliance rules. Okay, last bit, QuickSight. So QuickSight is the data visualization tool, and it has come in a way that I'm really proud about. Some of the advanced aspects of QuickSight is really, really exciting. This has been my dream, 5 years back, that you are able to ask a question in natural language, and your visualization tool is able to give you the results, not only give you the results, but also to chart it out in a nicer way that you can consume that insight. So for example, let's say if you are a BI developer, you build a nice dashboard based on the requirements given by your business users, and you gave that dashboard to them. And often you would notice that within a few days, they will come back with more questions because the dashboard is static and always they have further questions to ask you. Now, imagine if they are able to go in here and ask a natural language question. So they can ask something like, can you show me the sale of this particular product category in a certain region? And suddenly comes the answer in a nice chart. And then they can add on a little more to it and say, of which, which group of customers bought it, which segment of customers bought it. Immediately, the visualization changes, answering that question. So that is the real power of it. And it gets better by time because every time a result is produced, QuickSight will ask the user, is it right? Did I get it right? So based on the feedback, it's going to continuously learn and become more and more accurate along the way. And this is something that's really, really futuristic. It's in preview right now, but you may get access to play with it. So basically it is a lot of natural language processing underneath, and then machine learning behind it. Okay. So that's a summary. I know I touched a lot, but here, if you get the slides, so these are all the sessions that you may go into in YouTube, and there are amazing presentations available introducing everything that I talked about for you to get more information from. Okay, so here comes the end of it. If you have any questions, please go for it. I hope this was a good, useful introduction.
Thank you, Raja. Thank you for the super presentation. I think one of my favorite one is the QuickSight one that you presented at the end, right? To be able to query with natural language, that's something that I think a lot of customers will be looking out for. And to be honest, we've observed a lot of analytics requirements coming in from emerging markets like Cambodia. So I think there's a lot of takeaways that we can get out of your presentation. So thank you, Raja. We can leave the Q&A to the later parts of the session today. And since we are at the middle portion of today's session, I would like to maybe ask everyone to take a bit of time to go over to Slido to kind of rate the presentation that Donnie and Raja has presented, so that we can capture your valuable feedback and we can improve the session moving forward in future sessions. So maybe if you can take a bit of time, one minute or 2 minutes, to go over to the to slido.com to help us answer this question, that would be absolutely perfect. Yeah. So while we are answering the questions, what we have installed for the next 2 parts of today's sessions is Pong. Pong will be presenting to us on infrastructure, and then we'll have Frank at the last part that he will go through with us the rest of the releases that we have for reInvent. So please stay tuned. I understand that it's quite a long session today, but there's a lot of interesting topics that we have installed for you. So yep. So let's take another 1 extra minute to run through this question to provide some feedback. Yep, and this is for Raja's presentation. We'll start the next session in 1 minute's time. Okay, thank you everyone for your valuable feedback. I think it helps our speakers to improve in terms of the topics that we want to bring in future events as well. So moving on to our next speaker is actually someone from the region. His name is Pong. He's a solution architect for AWS. He's worked with various customers and partners across the ASEAN emerging markets like Myanmar, Cambodia, ranging from enterprises to startups. He has over 5 years of experience in development and operations of modern applications with containers and serverless technologies. So let us welcome Pong. I think Pong is already standby with his camera on. So I'll hand over the time to Pong, and he can bring us through some of the new releases in terms of infrastructure. Yeah, Pong.
Thanks, Shenzong. Let me share my screen first. I believe everyone can see my screen.
Yep, it's on. Thank you.
All right, cool. So yeah, thanks for the introduction. And those are two great presentations by Donnie and Roger, and learn a lot of new things from them as well. And I hope everyone will also be the same. So with that, let's get started. So good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining the webinar today. And my name is Pong Mian Cho. I'm a solution architect, like Shenzong mentioned, covering emerging markets, including Cambodia. And today, I'd like to share some of the highlights and updates regarding to the infrastructure from this year reInvent. So the agenda for my session is in 4 parts. The first is compute, some of the new instance types and capabilities, and storage, new functionalities within S3 and EPS storage, and some identity and infrastructure updates. So let's get started with the compute. So our customer told us that they need more than one tool to get the job done. So in this session, we're going to browse through some of the new EC2 instance types. And with AWS, builders have more and more choices to deploy their infrastructure and to run their workloads, and ensuring you always have the right instance type for your application characteristics and price to performance ratio as well. So most of the quick innovations that you can benefit from today is driven by the choices that we made years ago, investing in Nitro system, which is our custom virtualization system, and it is made of hardware, software, and our own ARM CPUs. And this year, we released Graviton 2, which is the best performing general purpose processor in the cloud with a significant lower cost. And I want to share some of the new EC2 instance type that you can use to upgrade the existing workloads to get better performance, lower cost, and get a price to performance ratio. Amazon EC2 C6 Gn Instances. So these instances are powered by the latest AWS Graviton 2 processors and based on the AWS Nitro system. And it provides the best price performance for compute optimized workloads that needs high networking throughput. And these instances provide up to 40% better price performance compared to the old C5n instances. It is especially for open source based applications such as high performance computing, network appliances, real-time video communication, and data analytic as well. So AWS Graviton processors are custom built by AWS using 64-bit ARM Neoverse cores to deliver the best price performance for your cloud workloads running in EC2. And these processors power EC2 T4G, M6G, and R6g instances, and the variants with local NVMe SSD storage. And that can also provide you up to 40% better price performance over the comparable current generation x86-based instances for a wide variety of workloads. So these applications and these workloads include application servers, web servers, microservices, high performance computing, electronic design automation, and gaming, and open source databases, and in-memory caches as well. So the next one is Amazon EC2 N5CN instances. So these instances are a high frequency, high speed, and low latency networking variant of Amazon EC2 M5 instances. These are powered by custom second generation Intel Xeon Scalable processor Cascade. And these instances deliver the highest all-core turbo CPU performance from Intel Xeon Scalable processor in the cloud with a frequency of up to 4.5 gigahertz, as you can see in the slide. So this combination of hyper-core compute performance and a balanced memory footprint make these instances an ideal fit for workloads such as gaming, financial application, simulation modeling applications, automotive, aerospace, telecommunication industry, or other high-performance computing applications. And these are available in 7 sizes, ranging from 2 to 48 virtual CPUs with 8 to 192 gigabyte of memory, and provide up to 45% better single-threaded compute performance than the original M5 instances. The next one is D3EN instances. So today, customers using the cloud, they're limited in storage capacity and disk throughput performance, and they're also not able to efficiently and effectively build cluster storage nodes with high performance networking. So customers who use Amazon EC2 D2 instances, they're looking to improve their processor performance, and they upgrade to the latest generation of CPU and hard disk drive. And D3 instances offer an upgrade path for the existing EC2 customers who uses the D2 instances by offering a similar storage compute capacity with the latest generation of Intel Xeon processors. So D3EN solves a complementary set of use cases by offering much higher storage capacity and the higher networking speed. And both of the attributes allow the customer to effectively use extremely skilled distributed file systems like Lecture GFS2 in order to build cluster of D3EN instances that have a higher storage throughput than a single instance, or what is possible when an instance is connected to the EBS storage. And in terms of use cases, the customers that are running file systems such as HDFS and MapReduce, and or analytic applications like EMR, Spark, Hadoop, or data warehousing application like Redshift or Kafka for data processing application or Elasticsearch. These customers can take advantage of the high I/O performance of these D3 instances. And the next one is R5b instances. And the new R5b instances increase the EPS performance by 3 times compared to the same size R5 instances. These R5b instances deliver up to 7,500 megabit per second bandwidth and 260K IOPS of EPS performance. And it is the fastest block storage performance on EC2 and as well as in the cloud today. So these instances are specifically designed for larger database and analytic workloads that require higher EPS performance per instance, and allowing customers to migrate their on-premise workload into AWS without needing to re-architect their applications. And some customer may need to run their database on a much larger instance to get a higher EPS network storage performance, even though they don't need the additional compute and memory, and you're paying for the end-use resources. Now these customers will be able to right-size their instances by leveraging the smaller instance sizes, and it can help you to reduce the cost. The next one is G4ad Instances. These are powered by Amazon AMD Radeon Pro V520 GPUs. It provides best price performance for graphic-intensive applications in the cloud. These offer up to 45% better price performance compared to G4d and previous generation instances, which were already the lowest cost instance in the cloud for graphic applications, like remote graphic workstations, game streaming, or graphic rendering that leverage industry standard APIs like OpenGL, DirectX, and Falcon. They provide up to 4 GPUs and 54 virtual CPUs and 25 gigabit per second networking, and 2.4 terabyte of local NVMe SSD storage as well. So we're pushing the envelope for compute-intensive applications. So for graphic-intensive application and for high-performance computing application. And so you might be wondering, what about the machine learning? So how we can push the envelope for the machine learning in the cloud? First, with the collaboration with Intel, we'll power the EC2 instances with the Intel's deep learning accelerator chips named Habana. It is a custom designed chip for accelerating the training of deep learning models, as opposed to GPUs, which are designed to support a wider range of workloads like playing games. And these EC2 instances featuring these accelerators will deliver up to 40% lower cost to train these machine learning deep learning models over the current GPU-based EC2 instances. It will allow the customers to iterate and train models more frequently, and it can help you to bring new innovations to the market very quickly. And these Habana-based instances will support common machine learning frameworks like TensorFlow and PyTorch. And Habana-based instances will be available in this year. And these, like I said, these instances are optimized for training deep learning models. AWS Trainium. We're also continuing to invest in our silicon innovation to drive down the cost of the machine learning training on the cloud. And for those customers that are already using our infrastructure chips and its SDK, it will make more sense to offer a solution which is capable of leveraging the same software development kits for machine learning training. AWS Trainium is the first AWS design chip that we are building specifically to provide the most effective machine learning training in the cloud today. These instances can offer the most compute power than any other machine learning instances in the cloud, and it will use the same Neuron SDK as inferential instances for machine learning and making it easy for the developers which are currently using inferential to get started with the training and very quickly. So it will be even more cost effective than the Habana chip that I mentioned in the previous slide. So it will support all the major framework like TensorFlow, MXNet, and PyTorch, and it will be available as a new EC2 instance, as well as through SageMaker later this year. And this is going to give you the best price performance for training machine learning models for applications like image recognition, natural language processing, speech recognition, personalization, and fraud detection, and as well as forecasting. EC2 instances. This is one of my most favorite features released in this year reInvent as well. So developer has told us that they're spending time and resources on building and maintaining on-premises macOS environments, instead of building the creative and useful application for their customers. So Amazon EC2 instances enable the customers to run on-demand macOS workloads in the cloud for the first time. It can extend by extending the flexibility, scalability, and cost benefit of AWS to all Apple developers. So with EC2 instances, developers creating applications for iPhone, iPad, MacBooks, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and Safari can provision and access these macOS environments within minutes. And you can dynamically scale the capacity as needed, as you are doing with EC2 instances, and benefit from the AWS pay-as-you-go pricing. And just one thing to be noted here is you will be billed for 24-hour minimum due to the Apple licensing process. So you need to make sure that you can take advantage of these 24-hour for your build process. And these are powered by AWS Nitro system. And these are built on top of Apple Mac mini computers, featuring Intel Core i7 processors, and offer the customers a choice of both macOS Mojave and macOS Catalina operation system, with the support for macOS Big Sur, Camison. And these instances provide the developers with seamless access to dozens of AWS services, so that they can more efficiently and easily collaborate with other team members and to develop, build, test, and analyze and improve their applications. You can integrate with your CI/CD pipelines. And similar to other EC2 instances, our customer can easily use these EC2 Mac instances together with other services like VPC, virtual private cloud, EBS, elastic block storage for expandable flow storage, and elastic load balancer for distributing your build queue, or FSX for scalable file storage. Or you can also do automation using automation and configuration using AWS System Manager, and also patching the macOS environment as well. And moving on to the storage. AWS has continuously innovate in the storage area to ensure that our storage offering has the broadest set of capabilities, price point, and performance options and functionalities that our customers want. So let me start with the Amazon S3 storage lane. Amazon S3 has always led the way in developing the innovative ways to optimize your cloud storage. We were the first to give you things like a schedule object inventory report, and also an analytic feature to help you set your optimal lifecycle policies for your object. And the new S3 storage lane takes that even further by aggregating over 30 different metrics and providing the organization-wide visibility with the ability to drill down into individual resources like regions, accounts, packets, or prefixes. So if you store your dataset across tens of hundreds of accounts and buckets, multiple regions, or even thousands of prefixes, storage lens is going to be a game changer for you. And not only the storage rank can report these metrics to you, it can also give you the contextual recommendation to make it easy to take actions immediately. So tons of customer, maybe even you're currently storing hundreds of gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte of data in S3. So the feature like S3 intelligent tiering and S3 storage lanes are going to help you to manage the storage environment and also keep the storage cost under control while maintaining your most valuable access the data with the durability and availability, which is practically impossible to achieve it on premises today. The next thing that I want to talk about is Amazon S3's strong consistency. Roger explained a little bit on the session, and I want to share some of the popular use cases. Before we dive deep into it, I want to share some of the popular use cases of Amazon S3 and how this new release of S3 strong consistency can help to remove and differentiate the heavy lifting of our customers. So millions of customers of all sizes in all industries have used S3 to store and protect any amount of data for a range of use cases, including data lakes, big data analytic, mobile applications, backup and restore, archiving, machine learning, and so on and so forth. So increasingly, customers are using big data analytic applications that require that they always need to read the latest object data even after an overwrite. So to ensure that the latest write is always read, customer had to use a custom code, or they have to implement other infrastructure in these applications that can provide the strong read after write consistency. So for example, we see some customers use some database like Amazon DynamoDB to keep a list of objects that is in lockstep with any changes potentially across billions of S3 objects. So building and managing this solution that you make, this custom solution to get the strong read after write consistency can be very complex and very costly. And it is not really unique to your own use case or any specific applications. So now Amazon S3 delivers the strong read after write and also list consistency automatically. And like other cloud providers, we deliver this strong read after write consistency for any request without any changes to performance or availability, and without sacrificing the regional isolation for application, and also at no additional cost. And customers use S3 replication today to create a replica copy of their data within the same AWS region or across different AWS regions for multiple reasons, like backups or compliance requirement, or they need a low latency performance for their multi-region applications. And some customers also need to replicate the data to multiple destinations to also to meet the data sovereignty requirement or to support collaboration between geographically distributed teams. So to address this problem, we announced S3 multi-region, multi-destination replication, so which allows our customers to replicate the data to multiple buckets within the same AWS region or across multiple AWS region or in a combination of both. So this gives our customer an even similar and flexible solution to meet the data compliance and data residency requirements. And it is very simple to build a data protection and backup plan. Now with just one replication rule, you can create multiple copies of your data in multiple regions. And with that, it can enable the customer to reduce the storage cost by replicating the object to a lower price tier storage class as well. So you can have a S3 standard storage in a primary region, and you can replicate it to the lower tier infrequent access or glacier storage class in another region. Moving on to APS volumes. So to set the context right, we think that the block storage is foundational, and it is very different from other type of storage. So block storage doesn't use the metadata to store and retrieve the data like object storage in S3, or it doesn't need to read or write an entire file during each transaction. So the read and write times for block storage are really fast, and APS volumes attached to your Ec2 instances, which means they process data independently from the life of your instance, which means even if your machine fail or turn it off, you can take the APS volume out of your Ec2 instance and reattach it to other instance, and then you can still use the data. So we launched Gb2 in 2014, and it quickly became our most popular volume type. And the customer loved the simplicity of buying more storage capacity, getting more throughput, and I was bundled with the storage. But didn't like how you had to buy more storage to get the better performance. They didn't like it with the Gb2 storage. It meant that customers are paying for more storage than they need in order to get the performance they wanted. So we wanted to create a way to decouple the I/O performance from storage capacity to solve the problem. And I'm pleased that now we just launched the Gb3 volumes to solve this problem. And these are the next generation general purpose volume that can deliver up to 4 times higher peak throughput than current generation Gb2, and now also include a baseline performance of 3,000 IOPS for each volume. So if you're fine with your storage capacity, but you need more performance to go with it, with Gb3, you can simply just right-click in the console and modify the volume to provision the IOPS or throughput that you require for your application without having to add more storage capacity. That means that you can save the cost by provisioning only the IOPS throughput or storage that you need. And we also reduce the price per gigabyte of Gb3 storage by 20% as well. So I think the customer will love the Gb3, but there's some workloads like cluster databases where customer need even more IOPS than they get with Gb3. This is why we also created provision IOPS volume type as well. So this is the Amazon EBS Io2 Block Express. So customer moved most of their demanding applications to EPS provision IOPS, but there's still some applications that even Io2 cannot support without having to combine multiple volumes together. But it is possible to do, but it adds additional management overhead and heavy lifting for the customer to run a very high performance application like on premises. Our customer has to like historically rely on SANs, but these are expensive and these are fixed costs upfront you have to pay regardless of your utilization. And the minute that you exceed your capacity, you have to pay for the whole new storage, another big fixed cost. So these are also very hard to manage by yourself. So customers don't like these, management over SANs to be, forced to keep them on premises. But they felt like they have no choice before because there isn't block storage with the performance of the SAN in the cloud previously. Now we just announced Io2 Block Express, the first SAN built for the cloud. Io2 Block Express is a feature in preview for Io2 volume users. It can increase the performance of your Io2 volume by 4 times across your performance dimensions. This means that you can now run your most many IO-intensive applications in the cloud like Oracle, SAP HANA, Microsoft SQL applications today that you run on SAN. So whereas before you might have to strike multiple volumes to get the maximum performance that you need for your application. That's it for the storage, and I'm going to move into identity to talk about the AWS single sign-on and some of the features that are being announced this year reInvent. So AWS SSO is the only permission management tool available that offers signing with your choice of identity source and central permission management tools across your AWS organization accounts. With AWS SSO, you can create tailored rule-oriented permissions in one place, and then you can assign the rules to your users or groups in just the account where you need to have access to it so that you can get fine-grained control over the user. And this can significantly reduce the number of rules that you need to create across your organization and your accounts. Now you can now pass your user attributes in the AWS session. When your workforce user sign into the AWS cloud, this can allow you to enforce this fine-grained permission policy such that your workforce can get only access to the cloud resources with the matching resource tag using AWS using tags for your resources. And now SSO admin can set to require user to self-enroll the multi-factor authentication devices during sign-in. For users without the register MFA device, you can require them to complete a self-guided MFA enrollment process following with the successful password authentication. This can allow the administrator to secure their organization environment with MFA without having to individually enroll and distribute the authentication devices to users. Now you can also add the web authentication as a new multi-factor authentication to single sign-on, in addition to currently supported one-time password OTP and radius authenticators. This can allow for the authentication with a wide variety of other authenticators, such as tapping a hardware security key or touching a fingerprint sensor on your Mac or using the facial recognition on a mobile phone or in your PC. And the last part of my session is infrastructure. So I'm going to talk about AWS Network Firewall. This is a new feature that is being released. It is a managed service that makes it very easy to deploy the essential network protections for all of your Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, VPC. This service can be set up in just a few clicks and scale automatically with your network traffic so that you don't have to worry about deploying and managing any infrastructure. It has a very flexible rules engine that can let you to define the firewall rules that can give you a very fine-grained control over your network traffic. And you can also import rules that you have already written in common open source rule formats, as well as you can also enable with the integration for the managed intelligence feeds, which are being sourced by the AWS partners. So AWS Network firewall work together with the AWS Firewall Manager so that you can build policies based on the AWS network firewall rules and then centrally apply those policies across your VPCs and accounts as well. And last but not least, AWS Gateway Load Balancer. It takes on the load balancing and scaling of third-party, virtual appliances by ensuring the very high availability and resiliency without having to, give up on your preferred appliances vendors. So it can reduce your operational overhead by providing the one gateway solution for routing traffic through your fleet of, virtual appliances. And you can easily deploy application from your favorite vendor from AWS Marketplace, and that they will automatically scale to keep up with your demand, and by ensuring that traffic is only routed to the healthy appliances. So Gateway Load Balancer increases the availability of your application and your workloads. This can create a very simple and streamlined network design with very fewer moving parts to manage in your infrastructure. And you can continue to work with the vendors you rely on today, or you can also find something new in AWS Marketplace, while Gateway Load Balancer can help you to reduce your operational overhead and costs. So that's the end of my session today, and I hope everyone will get benefit from it. And thank you all for attending the session. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sheng-Song to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Pong. Thank you for your session. I think compute remains the most popular kind of service that a lot of our customers are using AWS users, right? And I think Mac OS being released on compute, that is to me a very interesting thing that we did this year to allow developers to continue testing iOS and iPad OS on Mac OSs on AWS. So yeah, we'll move on to our last session for the day. But before that, can I just request everyone to maybe take another minute to rate the past session that Pong has presented, right? So we just want to capture your valuable feedback on our speakers to improve future sessions. So we'll just take 1 minute to pause at this question for you guys to vote and maybe to provide some feedback, and then we'll move on shortly to the last session of the day, which is the most important and most interesting session also.
Thank you, Sheng-Song. Hardly. Yeah, I learned so much about the announcements, deep diving with the other speakers today.
Yeah.
Donnie, Raja, and Pong.
So yeah, so I think we can get started with Frank's session. I think a lot of us, we are not we know Frank from the work that we've seen him done in Cambodia. So Frank is AWS Senior Solution Architect. He's based in Singapore, but he has worked as a cloud advisor, educator, and guide for businesses across ASEAN emerging markets over the past 3 to 4 years. So let us welcome Frank, our Senior Solution Architect from AWS, to walk through the rest of the announcements and services that we announced in reInvent 2020.
Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for the kind introduction, Sheng-Song. I'll take over the screen. Okay, so final stretch here. Thanks for sticking with us through the reInvent recap. Just to give you a very condensed 2-hour overview of the greatest announcements that we feel is most applicable to the Cambodia businesses that you work for. Condensing it from a 3-week duration down to just 2 hours. So obviously there's a lot more content that you can look for online, and just submit your feedback and any additional questions to the Slido that you can access using QR. So I'll be covering several areas for, in fact, databases, AI/ML, management, and governance. Let's go into the first bit, which is about databases. So the announcements last December when it comes to databases was all about Amazon Aurora, which some of you may know as the managed database that Amazon provides for our AWS customers, so that they can give AWS the burden of managing.
Sorry, Frank, you are not sharing the screen, I think.
Okay, let me.
Yeah.
Do that. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that now.
Yep, it's on. It's on now. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Aurora. was the centerpiece of the database's announcements. And Aurora, as you may know, is the managed database that's open source compatible with open source MySQL and Postgres, but it has 5 times the performance of open source MySQL and 3 times the performance of open source PostgreSQL. So first of the announcements is Aurora Serverless V2. Some of you may have played with Aurora Serverless, which is the MySQL serverless version, which provides a way to avoid the to actually bring kind of like an auto scaling capability to databases. So Aurora Serverless V2 provides a production grade version of that capability. So V2 can scale database workloads on very a fine grain of accuracy. So unlike Serverless V1, Aurora Serverless V1 scaled by basically doubling its capacity each time it needed to scale up and scale down. So instead of doing that, Aurora Serverless V2 does that scaling in fine-grained increments to more closely match the actual database load that your applications are experiencing. This helps customers pay for only the capacity that they need and reduces over-provisioning of databases, which is a common problem in traditional database infrastructure. And it will provide the full breadth of Aurora capabilities. Okay, it's now Aurora Serverless becomes ideal for a broader set of applications. It is currently available in preview today in selected regions, and you will need to sign up for the preview. So if you do watch out for the actual general availability of Amazon Aurora Serverless V2 database. And next up, Babelfish. Babelfish is it's a capability of Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL to meet the needs of many customers who are migrating applications to the cloud that are still using Microsoft SQL Server databases. So the challenge with Microsoft SQL Server, many customers have told us, is that these are inflexible, they're costly, they're non-scalable, even if they actually run it on EC2 Windows, or if they use RDS, the Relational Database Service managed database that has a Microsoft SQL Server on it. So Babelfish makes it possible to migrate applications that used to use SQL Server, but run them on PostgreSQL. How is that done? Because Babelfish provides a translation layer. It translates TSQL and the SQL Server basic queries into a compatible query to PostgreSQL, okay, without requiring changes to the application, without even requiring changes to your database driver. You can preserve your SQL Server driver and connect into what the application thinks is a SQL Server database endpoint, but actually it's an emulation, it's a translation layer endpoint that's running on PostgreSQL. Okay, so Babelfish, it's a name for, after this sci-fi comedy character in Douglas Adams' books, The Hitchhiker's Guide for the Galaxy. So the idea is Arthur Dent, the main character, puts a little fish, a very intelligent fish, into his ear, and it translates alien languages and alien galactic languages into English, so he can understand it. So that's why we've called it Babelfish. It translates into SQL Server TSQL queries into a PostgreSQL. Makes it much easier to reduce your costs and save a lot of time in retesting applications as you migrate from commercial databases to open source databases such as PostgreSQL. This was going to be available as open source on GitHub for ISVs that wish to extend and customize the framework, but the Babelfish capability of Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL is now available in preview for signups. AIML. Okay. So when Dr. Swami Subramaniam came on stage in December to announce the latest and greatest features in the AI and ML world, he emphasized that AWS has always been focusing on empowering developers and giving them the freedom to invent. So SageMaker is core and it's central to Amazon's AI ML capabilities. It's one of the fastest growing services in AWS history, and we've seen 10 times increase in team productivity for data scientists and data engineers. 90% cost reductions with managed spot training and 75% lower inference costs. SageMaker does make it a lot easier for enterprises to deliver AI ML capabilities for their applications, to drive more effective business decisions. Because the pipeline of steps required to deliver AI ML capabilities, it's very iterative, it's very labor intensive traditionally, from the preparation stage to prepare data, to build models and fine-tune them, to train and tune the models, as well as to deploy and manage the runtime inference. It's a lot of work. So what SageMaker provides is a suite of tools for data engineers and ML practitioners, data scientists, to rapidly deliver AI capabilities for their industries. Okay, and this is really it provides a lot of engineering for customers that need that fine grain of detail. Obviously, we have many customers that wish something easier, such as API-based AI services to deliver machine vision, machine recognition for forecasting, for retail personalization or banking personalization, for voice services and fraud detection. So these are also available in addition to SageMaker as part of AWS's AI ML services. And it goes further. So during reInvent, we've announced industry-specific solutions for customers that came to us from the industrial machinery and process engineering space, that they had a challenge of monitoring equipment across their industrial processes. So we listened to these customers and we thought hard about how to help these customers. So Dr. Swami Subramaniam, he's announced new ML services specific for the industrial AI needs. So starting with Amazon Lookout for Equipment to the left. This is a ML service that uses data from sensors in factory floors, in power generation, power delivery environments, and brings that to the cloud. And once it's on the cloud, Amazon Lookout for Equipment would process, analyze the data to look for potential machine failures, so that we can proactively avoid unplanned downtime by scheduling proactive maintenance on equipment. It supports third-party sensors. It analyzes metrics for pressure, for flow rate, for RPMs, revolutions per minute, for spinning machinery, temperature, and power. For something more consumable, some customers ask us, okay, can we provide the same capability, but provide the hardware or sensors as well? So we listened to them, and we're very pleased to announce Amazon Monitron is a very interesting set of hardware solutions. It's an end-to-end system. It's actually several parts. There are the sensors to capture vibration and temperature data from equipment. You can see in the yellow equipment there. There's a gateway device to collect and concentrate all the information at the remote site or the factory or the plant, and securely transfer that data to AWS. So Monitron also provides the service on the cloud to analyze the data, looking for abnormal machine patterns. And you can set up devices to track for potential failures. Third, Amazon Lookout for Vision. This is an ML service to help industrial production quality control. Okay, it reduces defects that would otherwise require a human to, in a very labor-intensive, and introduces fatigue as a QA engineer or a QA person looks at camera information to detect flaws, right? So Amazon Lookout for Vision makes it a lot easier to reduce the defects rates, and decreases the dependency on manual inspection steps. And lastly, there's AWS Panorama. So this is, it provides an SDK, a software development kit, where developers can bring computer vision to on-premises cameras to make predictions locally with high accuracy and low latency. It's low latency because this SDK connects to a local device that you see on the screen. It is a local appliance so that you can execute machine vision models disconnected from the internet. Okay, so it helps you to evaluate manufacturing quality, identify bottlenecks, look for safety information, and covering insights about, like, for example, a retail store, looking at the customer experience, and to help improve operations in remote branches with little or no internet connectivity. So that's the AI ML bit. Moving on to management and governance. So in interest of time, since we overran, I'll cut a bit of the and go a bit faster here. So AWS Cloud Shell. So this is especially for the cloud engineers and cloud administrators, even cloud developers here, which I suppose all of you on this call are. It provides a CLI, a command line interface to access AWS and to manage AWS from a console directly from a browser. Okay, so it's a fully managed environments with tools pre-installed. It's basically Amazon Linux 2 environment with the version of Node, Python, AWS CLI, Elastic Beanstalk, container-based CLI, SAM for deploying Lambda. So it's all-in-one management console. You can even extend it with .NET Core. So if you prefer running scripts on PowerShell, it provides and best part, it's free of charge. Okay, there's no cost to using Cloud Shell. It's available. It's generally available now in several environments, several regions. That is. I'm going to switch to a quick demonstration of Cloud Shell. So going into AWS console, the closest region to Cambodia is Tokyo. You can use the Tokyo environment, and you'll see on the upper bar there's this console icon, and that's basically you click on that and it launches Cloud Shell. Okay, so this is Cloud Shell. Just watch the space for it to be available in your region, in Singapore, or the region that you're using. Okay, so it's a full AWS environment, AWS SDS, get caller identity. And it will utilize the authentication information and the IAM permissions that you as a user has logged into from the console. So it inherits no need for SSH keys, no need to have your local CLI. You can manage. This is basically your entire CLI environment on the browser. Okay. So 3.h, you can see it is about 4 gigs of memory. DFSH. Okay, so you're basically running as Cloud Shell user, although your permissions are based on your identity of IAM identities. All of the data that you place in your home directory will persist. It will be persisted across sessions. Okay, Python environment is available. Yeah, so the full scripting environment is available. So it's very lightweight. There's basically a bash shell. You can extend it with Z shell if you require, and you can install any software on it as well. So this is running outside of a VPC. It's basically internet connected. So that is one thing to note. So you would not have direct access to private subnets in VPCs unless you figure out the network setup. But most of the entire set of AWS API and CLI is available for you. Going back to the presentation, the next thing to announce is AWS Audit Manager for customers in highly regulated industries. Let's say financial services and healthcare, in for example, highly sensitive industries that require extremely rigorous levels of audit and assurance by, for example, certified internet security professionals to comply to, for example, in payment card industry, PCI DSS security, or to comply to different SOC controls. This set of audit checks has traditionally been very, very laborious, very time-consuming. It requires an auditor to ask your AWS engineer and sit down over many hours and many days, in fact, going at each of the features and functions that you're using in AWS with a clipboard and checking off whether you're compliant to, for example, security, whether you have KMS keys for encryption, whether you're using SSH, whether you use SSL for all the endpoints, for example, where your credentials stored. So Audit Manager makes it a lot easier. It automates the risk and compliance to at least from that part of the from the shared responsibility model. Okay, it helps you to review your AWS environment looking for risks and to evaluate compliance and flag out areas that requires remediation based on the compliance rules that you have selected from SOC, from CIS, Center for Internet Security, benchmarks and best practices, PCI DSS for payment card industry, and so forth. Much easier for these highly regulated financial services and healthcare industries. Moving on to observability. Obviously, once we've shipped our products for our businesses, we need to operate them in production with real customers and real business impacts. And it's very important to observe what our workloads are doing. So that's why observability is important. And what is observability? It's all about, it's kind of like the enhanced version of monitoring. Okay, the observability gives you a deeper inspection. It's an approach to DevOps. It's an approach to operating cloud workloads so that cloud teams and services engineering teams can detect issues and be able to investigate in the fine grain of detail what is going on when things go wrong, and to quickly remediate and quickly fix issues as they occur. Okay, because environments change, especially in a fast-moving DevOps and cloud world. You're always deploying changes. There's always new releases and new things to ship as we progress through our sprints. So we need to observe to make sure that operations and the customer experience is maintained. And to support that, AWS has released the AWS distro for OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry is a CNCF, a Cloud Native Computing Foundation project that provides a standardized way, okay, using a single source of open source APIs for applications and infrastructure to log and to capture metrics that's independent of vendor-specific SDKs and APIs and programming language. So across programming language as well. So AWS has packaged this distribution for OpenTelemetry, and we are basically releasing this based on an upstream model. So we're enhancing the upstream open source version of OpenTelemetry, and we are releasing that as a specific AWS distro that's integrated into CloudWatch, metrics, and CloudWatch logs. Okay, that supports observability. And closely aligned with that, also another project within the CNCF Foundation is Prometheus. Some of you in the Kubernetes world and container world will notice pretty well, because Prometheus is very often seen together with Kubernetes projects. Prometheus is essentially the monitoring and alerting service for container-based applications. It can extend beyond container-based applications, but it started within the Kubernetes world, and is often seen alongside Grafana dashboards that we'll get into next. So Prometheus. One problem is that to stand up Prometheus, to install, configure, tune it, it's a lot of work for a DevOps team that have time pressure, cost pressure to ship features. So what the service is, a managed service for Prometheus, it makes it very easy to stand up a Prometheus logging environment and monitoring environment with a few clicks. And you can plug it into your ECS, Kubernetes, or EKS or ECS environment to start capturing metrics. And how do we render dashboards on top of the metrics that Prometheus has captured? So the next service is Amazon Managed Service for Grafana. Grafana is a dashboard environment that's closely aligned with Prometheus. So Grafana Labs has partnered with Amazon to bring you the managed service for Grafana. It provides a managed environment, so very quickly to stand up Grafana, scale it and secure it without too much engineering overhead, all managed from the AWS console or CLI. Okay, helps you to visualize, correlate metrics and logs. Of course, you could also use the CloudWatch dashboards, but many customers that have already standardized on Grafana can choose to use Grafana as well, and it's very closely integrated with CloudWatch. And when it comes to increasing the reliability and ensuring that our systems are running and can tolerate failure, okay? Because just like Werner Vogels, the CTO of Amazon, says, everything fails all the time. We need to build our system such that it can be reliable and tolerate failures at the software level, at the at endpoint level, at multiple levels down the chain. AWS can only do so much. The application needs to be responsible for application level retries, for failover, to be designed to be robust. So to help with that level of testing, we are announcing and coming soon, the fault injection simulator to make it easier to build chaos engineering into your applications. Okay. This is more advanced topic for which is basically inspired by many internet-based and digital native companies such as Netflix that have built in failure as part of their operational production. So what they do is they basically put in they design in failures at runtime to have that confidence that if a synthetic failure can be handled seamlessly without impacting the customer, then a real failure can easily be handled as well. So watch this space. It's really awesome that we're providing this as a service. AWS fault injection simulator coming soon. Okay. Closing out for one of the last, in fact, the last proper feature announcement is contact centers. Contact centers as a service is brought to you by Amazon Connect. So Amazon Connect is an omni-channel cloud-based contact centers. Typically, these deployments where you're running large operation centers requires a large capital investment in software infrastructure on premises. Amazon Connect makes it easy with a few mouse clicks to just stand up an entire call center in the cloud that's connected into that your agents can interact with from home, which is very, very useful in today's environment, especially. So it's an open platform. It has integrations with AI, ML services, self-service configuration. So what's new with Amazon Connect? A voice ID. So when a caller calls into dials into your contact center or sends an inbound call, so there's a voice ID to actually recognize the customer's voice and do a pre-identification of who this customer could be. Okay, obviously you have to enable this based on your privacy policies as a company. Customer profiles are now available. So this extended feature provides a way to collect customer records from Salesforce, from your CRM system, and bring it to the call center, basically call center agents web-based dashboard, so that they know who this customer is that's calling in. Wisdom is a preview capability that will help contact center agents to handle frequently asked questions from customers. For example, from a telco, if there's for example, some FAQs that they could use frequently. So Wisdom provides a recommendation of database, basically recommendations from database of FAQs that they can present to the customer service representative and agent to reply in context. Contact Lens is now available. This provides an AI/ML based service to improve the quality of calls and interactions with customers. So when customer calls in and the agent, in that voice dialogue is analyzed by Contact Lens to look for problems, for example, negative indications. For example, people are talking over each other, for example, or certain language is used, then it will flag it for example, compliance and improvement of the service. And lastly, tasks. When follow-up activities need to happen, or for example, you call into your call center as a customer, and the agent A passes off to agent B, passes off to agent C, they'll need to actually have follow-up tasks that follow them. So this task provides that continual workflow such that no agent actually drops the ball, as it were. And to close out, just want to highlight one of the last announcements is preceded by an infrastructure keynote. Okay, so in week number 2 of the December reInvent in 2020, Peter DeSantis, which is our senior VP for global infrastructure, gave the keynote and covered how AWS architects for availability. Okay, how we've optimized our data centers to really provide much better maintainability and redundancy using custom silicon. It helps to, and he also described about how this helps us overall to achieve our sustainability objectives for AWS's sustainability, renewable energy, and water conservation, and how we use water for cooling down in data centers and reducing our carbon footprint. So that sustainability drive, okay, really helps AWS to be on the path of running 100% of our data center workloads on renewable energy by 2025. That's 5 years ahead of our original target of 2030. Okay, and a study by a research company, 451 Research, found that AWS's infrastructure is 3.6 times more energy efficient than the median of the surveyed US enterprises. Okay, then it's peer data centers, that means non-cloud data centers. Okay, that helps us to achieve 88% carbon reductions because of simply our utilization of servers are higher. So, we have more efficient servers, with many of the Nitro-based innovations and Graviton-based innovations that my colleague Pong in the previous session was speaking about in Ec2 instance, and it helps us reduce our electricity consumptions, reduces our water consumption, helps us to achieve our renewable energy objectives. Okay. And just to close out, obviously the man himself, Werner Vengels, the CTO of Amazon. I do encourage everyone to listen to the replay of his keynote, as well as Andrew Jassy's keynote session. He spoke about reducing friction using tools. He talked about how customers needed to scale automatically, especially in this ever since the advent, the last year of COVID, when everything changed in the world, and many customers needed to scale their workload. For example, Zoom. But we're on this platform right now. They run majority of their workload on AWS, and they realized that they needed to scale incredibly, and they could only do that using techniques on AWS. And how do we use formal methods to mathematically verify the correctness of systems? So Werner spoke about that. He spoke about chaos engineering and how to engineer in reliable systems using chaos engineering, especially relevant in today's world, where the importance of digital business is underscored. And digital business is really powered by the cloud to make reliability and scalability work. To be able to have, like I mentioned, metrics and observability. Werner also spoke about the difference between simple metrics and actual 360 observability of our web services, essentially. And lastly, he basically a call to action for all of us to go out and build new and innovative features and customer services using ML, using quantum computing, and using the AWS platform. Okay. And on that note, thank you so much for your attention. Your feedback matters to us. Before going through the questions and answers, I'd just like to pause here. Most of you have heard this many times already in the course of these 2 hours, to please share your feedback. Honest feedback, just very quick. Appreciate your support. Now, going into the Q&A, let's look into the chat for any questions. Perhaps I'll hand it back to Shansong and Lexi. To take us home.
Thanks, Frank. Thank you so much to help for that session just now. Yeah, can I remind everyone to maybe just take a bit of time again to provide some feedback for the last session that Frank presented, so that you know what matters to you and what you want to look out for future sessions as well. And maybe I can invite all our speakers to turn on their webcam now, and then we can go through a short 5 to 10 minutes kind of a Q&A session for some of the questions that we've gathered from our attendees. Okay, so I guess while we are awaiting our feedback, maybe we can start with Donnie, right? Donnie, I think one of the questions that was directed to you was how to choose between Amplify, CloudFormation, and CDK. I think that was one of the questions that was asked.
Okay, how to choose between Amplify, AWS CloudFormation and AWS CDK, right?
Yep.
Okay, so first of all, for whoever asked that question, that is a really great question. And this is the way I like to think about the differences. So to create your AWS resources, in general, you can do two things. First is manual, like clicking on the console. And the second approach, which is more preferable, is adopting ISC or infrastructure as code. In this case, is AWS CloudFormation. And in most organizations, usually we have development and operational team, right? Developers use various programming language to build their application, and operation teams, they are juggling with configuration file to provision cloud resources. And this is exactly what CDK is all about. AWS CDK use the familiarity for developers to model their applications in programming languages such as Python, TypeScript, and Java. Yes, so you heard that right. You can program your cloud resources on AWS using your own programming language with AWS CDK. So CDK is actually the abstraction layer of AWS CloudFormation. And if you do like a CDK syn, it will produce AWS CloudFormation script. Now, Amplify, on the other hand, is for different use case. It's a solution for both backend and also front-end developers to build their applications together within one service. So in a nutshell, use AWS CloudFormations to help you spend less time managing your resources and infrastructure. Use CDK to reduce the friction between development team and operations team, so you can model with your preferred language. Plus, you have this advantage on extending to use Terraform. And for those who are operating with Kubernetes, we also have the CDK extension for Kubernetes on top of the built-in support for CloudFormation. And lastly, for Amplify, if you need to run your application using one single service to manage everything from front-end, API, analytics to machine learning, and you don't need to granular control over those resources, you can use AWS Amplify. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Donnie. I think you brought up a good point, right? Knowing which tool to use for which purpose,
Yep.
I think that helps the customers and to help them save a lot of time as well. So I will move on to the next question that is actually directed to Raj's presentation just now. It's actually a case that one of the attendees brought up. The question is that they have a use case of vertical DB for their customer, and they plan to do the warehouse and analytic and machine learning on those data. What would be the recommended use case of Redshift and analytics in loading on-premise data and using AWS for this use case?
Okay, once again, a great question, Shansong, and whoever has asked, thanks for that. I think I can, if you ask about use cases, maybe I can break it down into, there are some technical use cases and there will be some business use cases where you should consider this particular scenario. From the technical point of view, often what we see with data warehouses like Vertica on-premise is the issue of scale. So as we keep adding more and more ML-based workloads and more consumers coming in to access the data, on-prem warehouses have the challenge in scaling as well as managing the cost because of that. And that's the reason why cloud-based data warehouses, especially Redshift, comes into play. And recently now, this is the pandemic period, right? So we have seen our customers, I can quote Moderna, it's a very big customer, everybody knows about it. And you know the current crunch they are going through. So a lot of trials that are happening, so much of data getting collected, and being analyzed upon, and then it moves into the manufacturing, and you see the huge demand for vaccine manufacturing. So it's all powered by Redshift behind. So we are very proud of that. The ability for a customer to scale up on the cloud and to have their operations completely covered is a great use case in that industry. And also another customer who is actually manufacturing ventilators went up from manufacturing 30 ventilators in a week to 600 in a day. So imagine the amount of agility that Redshift has driven. So these are technical reasons why one should consider moving to Redshift. Basically, the way it scales and the ecosystem it brings upon for analytics. But since the question did not mention any specific industry, it'll be a little bit challenging for me to point out some use cases. But probably as a follow-up, you can whoever asked the question, please write to me or write to any of the presenters. We'll be able to help you to understand your industry and recommend use cases.
Thank you, Raja. Thank you. I think, like I mentioned just now, there's a lot of customers in Cambodia at the moment that is looking to data innovations.
Okay.
So I think we definitely reach out to your team once the requirements come in, right?
Great. Appreciate
okay. Then I'll move on to Pong, who we have a question. I think it's a very, very valid question, right? The question is that how or what techniques to prevent our Lambda from brute force? I don't want attacker programmatic request to API gateway and trigger Lambda to run. Is that a good way? Is there a good way that they can set the rate limit, right? I think that's a very good question, because if we move to serverless, how do we, control that portion, right?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And so there's a built-in feature in API gateway that you can rate limit your API. So this is one option that can directly answer a question. And the other thing is with the APIs, what you can do is to use the proper authentication to integrate, for example, with your mobile and your API. Like you can use services like Cognito for the authentication, and together with the rate latent, which can help you to protect your API endpoints.
Got it. Yeah, I think that will be one question that a lot of people will have in their mind when they move from server to serverless, because server they can configure a lot of things, right? But when you are on serverless, then what is there for you to really control? And that's one of the questions that was frequently asked. And then there's also a separate question on how is AWS network firewall different from other firewall offerings on AWS and the AWS marketplace, some of the other firewalls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so network firewall can complement the existing network and application security services on AWS by providing the control and visibility into layer 3 to layer 7 network traffic for the entire VPC. But depending on the use case, you can choose in between whether you implement AWS network firewall or along with or together with your existing security control with security groups, web application firewall, WAF, or other partner appliances from AWS Marketplace.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, sometimes you can build on to what AWS already provides with some of the marketplace partners that we have to really build up a more solidified security for your whole application all around, right? So yeah, I think we'll move on to our last presenter, Frank. I think there's a question on how is Cloud Shield different from Amazon EC2 Instance Connect? Frank's on mute.
Sure. Yeah. So Cloud Shell, Cloud Shell is well, as you see in the through the demo, right? The Cloud Shell provides an administrative interface that's accessible from the web. Some of you may be familiar with EC2 Instance Connect. So this is a capability of Systems Manager, which Systems Manager is an agent that runs on EC2 instances or on premises. EC2 Instance Connect helps administrators to log in and SSH into Linux instances without requiring to open network ports or to share key information or to use passwords. So it's much more secure, but it's intended to log into actual EC2 instances, which can be running your actual workloads. Cloud Shell is intended to be basically a zero-cost way, a lightweight shell in the browser to run CLI commands and to administrate your environments without requiring an EC2 instance.
Got it. Understand. And yeah, thanks, Frank, for the answer. I think before we close off today's session, we got one more question from the Q&A portion that just came in. I think, Donnie, you can answer this question quite well. It's that serverless versus ECS Fargate. Sometimes it's hard to decide which one is the right choice. Can you please explain a little bit on the pros and cons of each? I think this is a common question as well.
Thanks, Henshaw. So I just want to clear a misconfusion about the serverless services. So serverless is more than just AWS Lambda. We have DynamoDB for database, and then we also have Fargate if you want to run a serverless container. We have Lambda for running the serverless function. We have step function. So in a nutshell, there's a lot of services that is grouped into serverless categories. So if I guess it right, the question is actually to compare between AWS Lambda and also AWS Fargate. So it's just my rule of it's just my personal recommendation. If you want to run a long-running application, then I strongly suggest you to use AWS Fargate. Right, and then if you have like short-lived and then really concise a business domain or business problems, then you can use AWS Lambda. And it is quite a common architecture that we've seen. These AWS Fargate also complements with AWS Lambda or vice versa. So, but I would suggest if you're just getting started, I recommend you to use AWS Lambda because it is really easy. It's very robust. You can also have integration with various AWS services. And then if you need to have a long-running applications, then you can use AWS Fargate.
Got it. Got it. Thanks everyone. Thank you again for the Q&A session. I think it's been a really long evening for everyone, and we will post some of the additional questions because we did receive a few more questions for our Q&A. We'll post the answer on the user group, Cambodia AWS user group after this session, maybe sometime tomorrow, and you guys can check out some of the answers there. And again, I would like to thank everyone for sticking out with us till the end of the session today. You can send me an email if you have anything that you want to discuss after listening to some of our speakers today. You have areas that you want to maybe implement for your own business or your own project. Please feel free to reach out to me. My email is right there on the screen right now. So yeah, I know it's eating into everyone's dinner time. So just go enjoy the evening, and thank you again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you guys next year again in our reInvent 2021 highlights. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you.